All right, so it looks like we are now live, hopefully. We got breaking news. So these streams always start a little. YouTube streaming, it's kind of rough when you get started. But the breaking news is that we have the official announcement of the first lawsuit in the Covington case. Had to hop on the live stream and talk about this, guys. This is incredible. It looks like we have Hemmer DeFrank, Wessel's attorney at law. For truth, for justice, for Nicholas, they say. Today, Today, Lynn Wood and Todd McMurtry filed their first lawsuit on behalf of Nicholas Sandmann against the Washington Post. The lawsuit filed is included below. Let's see if I can actually increase this because it's really tiny. Nope, that's the wrong screen. I need to tweet as well. All right, there we go. So the suit seeks $250 million in both compensatory and punitive damage. Lynn and Todd will continue to bring wrongdoers before the court to seek damages and compensation for the harm so many have done to the Sandmann family. This is only the beginning. I quite literally rushed as quickly as possible to get this up. So first, so this was tweeted out. I saw this tweeted by Jack Posobiec, and admittedly, this is Hemmer Law. And so we've got Todd v. McMurtry, Hemmer DeFrank, Wessels PLLC, United States District Court, Eastern District of Kentucky, yada, yada, yada. I can only assume that this is the accurate website. And that's one of the big challenges. So for those that are watching, what does it say? Okay. For those that are watching, you can super chat if you have questions. You want me to pop up? That also helps support the channel. And also search for this too, because I don't know what else I could do beyond reading hemmerlaw.com to make sure that this is the right website and that the announcement is as official as they come. But my understanding is that this is legit. So unless you guys have any information otherwise, it looks like the first lawsuit has been announced, and I mean it's pretty substantive. So again, if you're in the super chat and you want to comment anything, we can talk. Let me just I want to make sure I've got all of the details. Yeah, I mean, a ton of people are tweeting about this, so I can only assume this is accurate. But for those that are just tuning in right now, to reiterate, let's go back to the top because I know people are coming in late. This is Hemmer DeFrank, Wessel's attorney at law, and we have L. Lynn Wood and Todd V. McMurtry announcing there is a lawsuit against the Washington Post for $250 million. It's really long. I'm not going to read through everything because I think we understand the gist of what the lawsuit's about. For those that might not be familiar, Nathan Phillips, Native American, got in the face of this kid, Nicholas Sandmann, and started banging the drum. This fake Twitter account is presumed to be fake now. Even the Washington Post acknowledges this. Claimed the kid got in his face. It went viral. Nobody fact-checked, right? Nobody fact-checked. They published it as fact. Well, now you're getting sued. This is actually potentially big, especially we just heard recently that Clarence Thomas is, here's my understanding, not a lawyer, but I saw this being tweeted out a lot. Clarence Thomas is looking for a case to overturn Times v. Sullivan. Okay, I could be wrong again, but my general understanding is the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, wants to get rid of the protections that public figures have when dealing with defamation, slander, and libel. Right now, in order to sue someone, a public figure, for defamation, libel, or slander, you have to prove actual malice. What that specifically means is that you have to prove they had knowledge what they were saying was false, not just that they were negligent. Well, outside of that, that doesn't matter. Nicholas Sandmann is a private figure, not a public figure. So what they all did, all of these media outlets, all of these personalities, was negligent. And I mean, it's insane. So I got to say this. I know there's going to be a lot of journalists hemming and hawing. The Washington Post, payout, settle. You lose, okay? These people who published false information need to be held accountable because we cannot live in a system, we cannot have a society where powerful media entities are able to destroy the lives of individuals with false accusations and lies. And there has to be some repercussion. So I will start reading through this, but I want to make sure everything's functioning over here on this end. I'll go through some super chats as well, making sure this is working. So let's see. There we go. Justin Potts says, keep it the good work, man. If you make it to 1 million subs, celebrate taking off your beanie. I will never celebrate anything, whatever. Ian Hall says, this is MAGA country. Sue their pants off and make them pay. Gabriel Lopez says, I saw a video of you skateboarding, was kind of impressed. You remind me of Rodney Mullen. Well, that was a long time ago. I still skate, though. Money for my favorite true progressive. Appreciate that. Oh my, this is delicious. Doesn't he need to prove compensatory damages? I think that's in there. So I don't want to get caught up on all the super chats because they kind of get, they get way down. But here we have the introduction. The Post is a major American daily newspaper published in Washington, D.C., which is credited with inventing the term McCarthyism in an editorial cartoon published in 1950. Depicting buckets of tar, the cartoon made fun of the United States Senator Joseph McCarthy's tarring tactics of engaging in smear campaigns and character assassination against citizens whose political views made them targets of the accusations. In a span of 3 days in January of this year, commencing on January 19, the Post engaged in a modern-day form of McCarthyism by competing with CNN and NBC, among others, to claim leadership of a mainstream and social media mob of bullies, which attacked, vilified, and threatened Nicholas Sandmann. I'm not going to read through all of this. They bring up many, many points. They mention he's 16 years of age, he's 5'9", weighs 115 pounds, presumably to show that in no way was Nathan Phillips being threatened, right? So I'm just going to do this one more time because I see that the viewership number just jumped. For those that are just tuning in, this is presumably the official announcement. I've seen several right-wing personalities tweet this out, that the first lawsuit has been filed in the Covington case, and I am subsequently checking Twitter to make sure this is accurate, because admittedly, this, I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical. I want to make sure this is real. But it's about the best I can do. I've seen several personalities publish this. Hemmer Law. Okay, here we go. All right. It looks like I have official confirmation. Lynn Wood has tweeted, "Here is the complaint filed today against the Washington Post on behalf of Nick Sandmann. All members of the mainstream media and social media mob of bullies who recklessly and viciously attacked Nick will be well served to read it carefully." So let me see if I can pull up this file real quick as well. And maybe I can drag this over. Maybe I can. There we go. So it looks like we've got it. It looks like we have it. And yes, it would appear that this is confirmed. Once again, as the numbers roll in, what you are looking at right now is the official lawsuit against the Washington Post. I do not like the Washington Post. You want to know why? We have two big instances that I really want to highlight. First is this guy, Paul Farhi. He wrote a story about James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, and he said that James O'Keefe did not disclose the person he had on camera was a health producer. I believe it was a health producer. And that it was essentially a misleading story. But one of the first things James O'Keefe said was, "I want to introduce you to this health producer," or whatever his job was. Basically, long story short, I could be getting the details a little mixed up. Paul Farhi refused to correct his story at the Washington Post. And again, I believe Washington Post, when we're dealing with lawsuits, I'm trying to be careful to make sure I'm not making statements of fact, but my opinions and what I think happened. And after several people complained, he didn't do it. Another big issue, which I have no problem calling out, is Dave Weigel, who published what I would believe to be completely fabricated news about Kim.com trying to hack Seth Rich's Gmail account to prove a conspiracy, which it would seem that Dave Weigel just completely made up and was the most ridiculous, absurd nonsense I've ever seen. And they edited the article 6 months later to cover up the fact they produced total trash. And there were several high-profile reporters, like a tech reporter from Politico, as well as a White House reporter, I believe, from the Daily Beast, I could be wrong, who pushed the narrative as true because they trusted the Washington Post, but it was total garbage. The Washington Post, in my opinion, tends to be a trash rag. That's my opinion. I'm allowed to have it. And now they're being sued because once again, we have the third strike and you're out Washington Post, where they smeared Nicholas Sandmann and these other kids who literally didn't do anything other than being stupid high school kids who were having a good time and smiling and confused. And there you have it. So we have this. They say, so check this out. So United States District Court, Eastern District of Kentucky, I'm just going to double check on this. Lynn Wood is not verified on Twitter, but it does look like this is him. It's the best I can do. I'm looking at his Twitter account. You can't see this on the other screen, but it looks like he does have the photos. He's being retweeted by several personalities. I'm going to say this. Take everything with a grain of salt. I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. There's always room for error, but my understanding is that this is legit. We're here. We got tons of people tweeting about this. Tons of personalities, right-wing personalities are sharing this. Lynn Wood's Twitter account, not verified, but is sharing this too. I really doubt anyone fabricated this massive document. They say, now comes Nicholas Sandmann by and through his parents and natural guardians, Ted Sandmann and Julie Sandmann, and by and through his counsel states his complaint against defendant WP Company, LLC, DBA, The Washington Post, as follows. So so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump over to this article, which has basically the same thing, but in a more legible format. I'm not going to read through everything, but basically we've got all of these points being made. There's a few important points that I want to bring up before moving down. One, as I mentioned, public figures. It's harder to sue a public figure for defamation. It's harder to sue as a public figure for defamation. So I've been through this. In instances where I was falsely accused of ridiculous absurdities, I was told by multiple lawyers I would have to prove they knew what they were saying was false. And this gets really interesting, okay? The Southern Poverty Law Center once wrote that I was alt-right and that I had attended a Holocaust denial conference in Iran. Their proof? An archive of a Holocaust denying website. What's really funny about this is it created kind of a weird legal conundrum for the SPLC. If they wanted to claim that it wasn't defamation, there was no actual malice, they would have to assert that they didn't know it was false, meaning they truly believed Holocaust denial. Okay, so it was a website about a Holocaust deniers conference that had been deleted from the internet and stored in an archive. That would mean if they wanted to defend against this, okay, for one thing, if they made that claim against any regular person, any private individual, they'd lose. Because it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. It's not true. I've never been to Iran. Why would you believe Holocaust deniers? And no, I'm not alt-right. If in order to defend themselves against calling me these things and claiming I went to Iran, they'd have to state on the record they believe Holocaust denying websites are factual sources of information, and they had no doubts as to whether or not the information was factual or not. I think that'd be really bad for their credibility. Ultimately, they retracted the whole article, took down the guy's other articles, and issued an apology where they said I was in fact an individual on the left. I appreciate that, okay? I'm not here to drag the SPLC. I'm just making a point about when you're a public figure. But here they say, Nicholas has zero history of political activism or aggressiveness and did not publicly exhibit any such conduct even when confronted with unbridled racist attacks by activist bullies at the National Mall. Not an activist, not political, just some kid who, my understanding, bought a hat while he was in D.C. A lot of people have said, yeah, well, maybe they didn't do anything, but why was he wearing a MAGA hat? Well, apparently, they went on a field trip, and while they were in D.C., this may come as a shock to many people, people sell souvenirs. Some of those are MAGA hats. Apparently, many kids bought MAGA hats. I also heard that on previous field trips, kids bought Obama hats. They just bought the hats. They don't, a lot of people don't seem to realize that the average person in this country has no idea what you're talking about. Seriously. So a good example is the two Marines who were beaten up by Antifa in Philadelphia. They saw these Marines walking down the street, apparently near the protest, and one of the guys said, "Are you proud?" to the Marine. The Marine said, "Huh? Like, didn't know what that was." And he said, "I'm a Marine." I said, "Are you Proud Boys?" And he said, "I don't know what Proud Boys is." So they started beating them. And get this, Antifa started screaming racial slurs at them. And we're going to do an honorable mention right now. Jussie Smollett claims that he was attacked by, a guy yelling, two guys yelling racial and homophobic slurs becomes national headlines. Well, that was a mistake because it's in all likelihood false. But what happened when these two Marines were called a bunch of ethnic slurs while being beaten by Antifa? And they have video of it. And the anti-fascists were charged with multiple felonies. 3 of them so far, I believe. Where is the national media on Antifa screaming ethnic slurs at people while beating them? There was a Jewish guy at that event, too, who got beaten up. Where is the national media about that? Yeah, it's really weird, isn't it? They don't seem to realize they're in a bubble, and this is an example of what happens when you're in your bubble and you don't do your job. Washington Post, you get sued for $250 million. Now they make all of these points up. These are all the points in their, essentially in their favor. But here's one of the more interesting things in the suit. In order to fully compensate Nicholas for his damages and to punish, deter, and teach the Post a lesson it will never forget, this action seeks money damages in excess of $250 million. The amount Jeff Bezos, the world's richest person, paid in cash for the Post when his company, Nash Holdings, purchased the paper in 2013. Quite literally, they are demanding the complete value of the paper in compensation. God damn. I gotta say, it feels pretty good. Justice feels pretty good. I worked in media But I am also sometimes a bit contrarian. I'm a skeptic, and I have problems with authority. Maybe you've noticed this. It's why I basically work for myself. I am very much so anti-authoritarian, and this goes for anyone who's a fascist or a Stalinist or Antifa who thinks they have a right to beat people because their ideology supersedes everyone else. But here we have the Washington Post, which is part of a growing problem in this country of lazy, incompetent, I don't even want to call it journalism, publishing words on the internet. They don't deserve that qualification of being journalists when they do things like this. Now, I'm being a bit hyperbolic. There are definitely good journalists at the Washington Post and in most places, and I do think media organizations tend to do a good job. But there are special exceptions for many different organizations, most notably New York City. Now, what do I mean by doing a good job? Well, let's take a look at what happened in Chicago. You've got CBS reporters, NBC, ABC, and local Fox reporters in Chicago who hit Jussie Smollett's story out of the ballpark. Excellent reporting, real sources, factual information, using the proper qualifiers like alleged attack, claims to have been attacked, claims they said these things. What did national media do? Well, the New York Twitterati types went on Twitter and created a slew of nonsensical tweets screaming and screeching about racist Trump supporters. Oops. Turns out the story's in all likelihood a hoax. And the latest update on that, for those that are interesting, the two brothers, the Osundairo brothers and their attorneys, apparently just met with prosecutors. So it was being reported they were meeting with a grand jury. That's not the case. It was clarified by, I believe, CBS, where they were meeting with prosecutors. It is very likely, if Jussie Smollett sent himself the letter or paid these guys to do it, that's a federal crime. The FBI is involved. The FBI has been investigating that letter, and they're sitting in on the interrogation. These two guys, by all the reporting in Chicago, are saying they were paid to do it. Okay? Now, no more derailing. Let's get back to this issue. What did all of these other media outlets do? You see Brian Stelter on CNN. He has Liz Plank on from Vox. And they're pushing the narrative that journalists did a good job. Sorry, Mediaite put together a huge list of people even from ABC, NBC, National, I'm saying, Reuters, the Associated Press, and obviously Newsweek and the Daily Beast and all of these other outlets that are rife with people who publish nonsense because they're activists, not journalists, pushing this narrative, saying this is on Trump, this is your fault, and all this other stupid nonsense. So what do I mean by justice? Well, when I hear that a $250 million lawsuit was just filed against the Washington Post, I immediately think of the fake news they wrote about Kim.com. I immediately think of the time one of their writers refused to correct a story they had gotten wrong. They don't care. They wanted to lie. I think about every single person who smeared these kids, and I'm not just mad about the injustice these kids faced. I am sick and tired of these elitist scumbags who think they can say whatever they want, do whatever they want, even when it's a lie, refuse to correct, and sweep it under the rug. How many people deleted tweets following the Covington, following, this incident? And you know what, to an extent they should. But how many people just try to sweep it under the rug and act like they didn't do anything wrong? Okay? These media companies don't source information. Did you know? In journalism school, they teach you need 3 sources, but not just 3 regular, any source. You need 3 credible sources. I was just talking to somebody who works for a local ABC outlet, and she was telling me that they had a story where they had 2 really good sources and 1 kind of okay source, and they said, don't run it unless we get 3 sources. Local outlets, bravo. I think they do great work because they're less concerned about this national nonsense and chasing the algorithm and living in the Twitterati bubble of bullshit. But what happens at the Washington Post? Did they have any sources for the story? No. They had a Twitter video. Did they try and find the source material? No. They just repeated what a fake account said that later got deleted. And here's the best part. They even acknowledged this in this lawsuit. That let me see if I can find it. Basically, what they said was, here we go. According to media reports, 2020 Fight account was created December 2016, tweeted an average of 130 times per day, and was suspicious for its high follower count, unusually high rate of tweets, highly polarized and yet inconsistent political messaging, and the use of someone else's image in the profile photo. In fact, as acknowledged by the Post on January 23rd, the 2020 account was likely a fraudulent account available for sale on shoutcart.com. Well, the Washington Post, you were able to figure that out 5 days later, 5 days after this tweet went viral and smeared these kids who didn't do anything wrong. Did you bother doing any of that reporting before rushing to this story without confirmation? We just saw, I believe it's a CBS reporter, Laura Logan. She did an interview with somebody. This was published on Breitbart, as well as picked up by many digital outlets, saying that the media has effectively become propagandists. Now, I do believe that the New York base, the New York culture of journalism is decrepit, infected. It's decaying, rotten. It's a rotten cesspool of activists who don't even understand their own ideology and push total garbage nonsense most of the time. Not all of them, just a lot of them. A lot of them. They're activists. You know, when I saw Brian Stelter claiming that journalists didn't get this one wrong on Jussie Smollett, I said, he's right. They didn't. The ones who got it wrong are pretending to be journalists. So it's true. But that's not really what he meant. No, he meant that they were great reporters covering it. And I'm sorry, you had a bunch of mainstream organizations pumping out total crap. I've worked for these companies. I've seen what they do. Many of the digital outlets just have writers submit things, freelancers, and then the editor just says, sure, whatever. They don't fact check. They don't care. They don't. In fact, as many of you know, when I worked for Fusion, which is now called Splinter News, I was told just to side with the audience. Whatever the audience, we're here to side with the audience. I'm not. I made a video where I said I didn't like Alita Battle Angel, and apparently people didn't like it. There you go. I'm not going to play that game. But these people play that game. It's not just the Washington Post. I am. This gives me, what do you call it? What's Schadenfreude? Is that what it is? I really should read some of these super chats, but I want to go through more of this. I'm not going to read the entirety of it, but I do want to get to the conclusion. So they mention that almost immediately, right? So what they're saying here is that there was available an accurate video as to what occurred on January 18, 2019 was available online on January 19, 2019. In fact, it was a live stream. It was available the entire time. They say when Shar Yakutaz Banyamin, one of the Hebrew Israelites who was present for the encounter between Phillips and Nicholas, posted a 1 hour and 46-minute video on Facebook. A plethora of relevant video was available online, but ignored by the Post and the mainstream and social media mob of bullies, which the Post sought to lead to further its biased agenda. Washington Post, you're first. Who do you think is next? There's a huge list of over 50, I believe it's over 50, organizations and personalities who pumped out garbage, complete garbage. How many of these organizations took Nathan Phillips' word for it? With no sourcing, with no confirmation. They didn't watch what happened. And it's terrifying because you have to realize what happened with Covington happens all the time. The Gelman amnesia effect. You read a story. Let's say you're an expert. I gave this analogy fairly often. I gave this analogy to Joe Rogan when I said, you're an expert on MMA, right? Have you ever read a story about MMA and you were just like, whoa, that's so awful and wrong? And he was like, of course, right? You turn the page in the newspaper and there's a story about Syria and you go, wow, I didn't know that. But why would you assume anything else from the publication is true? This is the greatest example. The only reason we know what actually happened is because independent individuals online refused to believe the trash. Independent journalists started digging through. You know, I was able to figure out what actually happened. It was someone sent a video to this Nikiko, I think you pronounce her name. She's one of the personalities from What's Happening. And she tweeted at me on Twitter, said, someone, check out this live stream of it. When I saw that, when it was sent to me, it had 500 views. Okay, so this was a distributed effort from individuals online refuting the mainstream narrative, the activist narrative, finding evidence and sharing it. And people spoke out and said, this is fake news. I didn't think it was going to get corrected. I said, this is once again going to go down in history as total bullshit. I'll tell you what, man, a lot of the reporting about Occupy Wall Street is insanely fake news. And there's nothing you can do to fix it. Because these people start writing books, the books get cited, the articles get written, and they romanticize the past. Today, this gives me at least some hope. Not only were people able to fight back, present the truth, and exonerate these kids who did nothing wrong, but now we're seeing the ramifications of the lazy trash journalism. First, it's the Post, and they're being sued for all their worth. Okay, I'm sure they have more money in the bank than $250 million, but that's their straight value. The point I bring up here is that the evidence existed. The Washington Post didn't even look for it. I admit, neither did I. It was sent to me. Okay, it was a tip. And I'm sure Nikiko, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if I'm getting it wrong. I'm sure, someone sent her the tip or somehow she found it. People were searching for this information and digging things up. Why is it that random people on Twitter did a better job of finding the truth than the Washington Post did. Okay, so once again, I see that the live stream numbers have jumped. For those that are just tuning in, $250 million lawsuit filed against the Washington Post for their role in the Covington scandal. I got a ton of super chats. If you want to contribute to this stream, my work, you can hop over in the super chat. I will do my best to read through comments after we get through this. And we can maybe talk about some other things, but we got a lot to go through. I'm not going to read everything, but we're reading through This Is the Suit from hemmerlaw.com. And I do also have the actual file here. So this is tweeted out by Lynn Wood. I'm like 99% sure this is legit. I say 99 because I always tell people, fact the stuff, look on Twitter, check for yourself. It's being tweeted out far and wide. And it looks like a decent amount of legitimate work went into this. So here they talk about an investigation reveals the truth. They go through, how there was an independent investigation that was done and just recently completely exonerated the Covington kids. One of the most important details that everyone needs to know is that after evidence surfaced that these kids did nothing wrong, a new video started getting pushed by people on the left where some kid says it's not, I'll just call it assault, if she likes it or something like that. Someone then says he does not go to Covcath, saying that kid doesn't go to school here. Apparently, according to the independent investigation, the kid who made that offensive comment about assault did not go to that school, but it was still being pushed by the left to try and grasp at straws to prove their narrative was true. There are still people saying, well, those kids were being disrespectful. Yes. Anyone who believes these kids were being disrespectful did not watch any of the videos. They're just believing the narrative. Even after we learned for a fact, no one yelled, build that wall. That was a lie. Nathan Phillips lied. You still had, you had Reza Aslan tweet, was it just my imagination? Yeah, dude, it was. Even an independent investigation found there was no evidence that students performed a build the wall chant. So check this out. The GCI report made the following key findings. Nicholas' January 20 statement accurately reflects the January 18th incident. There was no evidence that students responded to the Black Hebrew Israelites with any offensive or racist statements of their own. In fact, they were booing them. Can you believe how insane the world has gotten? That when the Black Hebrew Israelites were yelling homophobic slurs and these kids booed them for doing it, the kids were demonized by the press and the left. That's how insane it is. Did you also know that today, Donald Trump, they announced that Donald Trump's doing a big LGBT initiative internationally in response to a gay man who was hanged in Iran? You don't got to trust him that he actually cares about this stuff. But listen, you can't act like all Trump supporters are psychotic, racist homophobes. Sure, I'm sure some are. I've also heard Antifa scream racial slurs. The point is there's nuance. We had kids actively booing homophobia, and they were smeared as bigots and racists. The students asked their chaperones if they could perform school cheers to drown out the Hebrew Israelites' invective. And upon receiving approval, they performed the same cheers that are commonly performed at football or basketball games. That's what it sounded like to me. I didn't know what it was because I'm not familiar with their chants. There was no evidence that students chanted build the wall. Defendant Phillips approached the Covington students, not the other way around. There was no evidence of offensive or racist statements by students to Mr. Phillips or members of his group. The majority, if not all, of the MAGA hats being worn by students were purchased before, during, or after the March for Life. In previous years, some students had purchased Hope hats in support of Obama. Mr. Phillips' public interviews contain some inconsistencies. And then they put forth a huge list of lies, provable lies, verifiable lies. When I saw that first interview with Phillips where he's crying, saying they were chanting build that wall, I said, wow, that's extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and general claims require general evidence. I looked through the videos. I watched the entire 2-hour live stream. I did not hear once. And not only did I watch that whole stream, I actually started jumping back and forth through it to try and find key moments and record it. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. So here we have all of the insanity. Not only did Phillips lie, but the media kept calling him a Vietnam vet, even when in his interviews, Phillips was, in my opinion, very sneaky about it, saying he was a Vietnam-era veteran. And then news organizations, not having a copy editor or a legal department or fact checkers for whatever reason, just said he was a Vietnam vet. We then found evidence, and other individuals found evidence, that on Facebook, at some point, Nathan Phillips did claim to be a veteran of the Vietnam War. He said he was a Vietnam vet, to imply he was a veteran of the war itself. So we have all of these falsehoods. He claimed Nicholas Sandmann blocked his path. Nope. and everyone just uncritically parroted the narrative. No one talked to the kids. No one got a statement from witnesses. They just said what the activist says goes. How dare those racist bigots? Now, here's where they get into the Post coverage and why the Post is in trouble. The Post rushed to lead the mainstream media to assassinate Nicholas's character and bully him, publishing their first article no later than 1:37 p.m. January 19th. The story was not hot nor breaking news. To the extent the Post performed any investigation at all into what occurred, its unreasonable investigation did not take long, and contrary information did not stop it from publishing its first story in its Sunday newspaper the next day. One of the reporters of the story first retweeted the video approximately 4 hours before receiving credit for the Post's first article. In the intervening time, the Post apparently managed to track down and interview Phillips, write a story, and fan the flames of the social media mob into a mainstream media frenzy of false attacks and threats against Nicholas. And guess what? Now we get to a little derail here. They're still live. Kathy Griffin actively called for her millions of followers to dox, to surface private information, to invade the privacy of kids. The guy who called for these kids' deaths, still on Twitter. Where's Jack Dorsey? Oh, he's out somewhere talking about, how they don't ban people based on political ideology. Yeah, okay. Okay, buddy, I'll believe that when CJ Pierce and Jesse Kelly were arbitrarily suspended, when Milo was accused of brigading Leslie Jones, and he got banned permanently, yet calling for the death of some kids, well, that's a slap on the wrist. How about that? Or Kathy Griffin calling for doxing. And they're not the only ones. They're not. There was a list put together by some conservatives, about 1,800 tweets, is my understanding, of various people dragging these kids. One dude, who I think was a Disney producer, showed a picture of bodies being thrown into a wood chipper. And he said something like the kids go in the wood chipper screaming face first, or something ridiculous. That's insane. How insane has the world gotten? I have no problem when Jussie Smollett comes out and says I was attacked by, MAGA, dudes yelling out MAGA country. I have no problem saying, okay, let's investigate. But I absolutely condemn those people. Who wouldn't? Absolutely. Bring them to justice. Well, now it turns out it was kind of a hoax, so bring Jussie to justice. Majid Nawaz was attacked. I have absolutely no problem saying I support Majid, and that guy who attacked him needs to be brought to justice. And I'll still wait to see evidence and reserve, final judgment for sure. I'm always open to having to being proven wrong. The point is, I have no problem calling out anybody of any political faction when they do something wrong. But why is it that these people who called for the most insane, disgusting things are still active? Yet Milo was mean to a celebrity? Come on, I'm not a fan of Milo, okay? You guys follow me, you know that. I'm not a fan. I don't like what he does, not in the least bit. But you know what? He's allowed to do it. He shouldn't have been banned. Clear political bias. These people are still online with their false attack. They're not false attacks. They're real attacks. Threats against Nicholas. In the Post's own words, albeit a far cry from the true scope of the false and defamatory accusations it made against Nicholas, the readers of the Post's coverage were licensed to conclude that the students saw Phillips from afar, targeted him, and advanced. Of course, the Post's readers were also licensed to falsely conclude that Nicholas physically and verbally assaulted Phillips while blocking his egress from a mob of students who were similarly engaged in racist conduct. The Post, whose coverage emphasized that Nicholas was wearing a MAGA hat, contributed to the rampant cyber assault and cyberbullying suffered by Nicholas in the aftermath of its initial reporting, which was also undertaken in mass by the mob of other bullies made up of other members of the mainstream media, individuals tweeting on Twitter, church officials, celebrities, and politicians. I want to point something out, and I hope you can understand this. Every day, at every waking moment of my life right now, my Twitter mentions are locked at 99 plus. And when I click those mentions, do you know what I see? Tim is this kind of slur, that kind of slur. Periodically, not super frequently, I get threats of violence. Sometimes people will post things off Twitter and link to it where they say they know where I live. I receive emails, threatening emails. Typically, if I click on my mentions, I get inundated with the most insane, disgusting hellscape language you could possibly imagine. But you know what? I'm used to it. I've been slowly walking into more and more, followers and more notoriety. I'm not saying that as to brag, but just so you recognize, with the attention comes negative attention. I'm prepared for this. Okay. After Occupy Wall Street, I was featured heavily in a bunch of press, and I was attacked mercilessly. I was physically attacked several times by activists during and after my press coverage from Occupy. But this was a slow buildup. I was able to build up mental defenses to understand that over time it's gotten worse. At a certain point, I just say it rolls off my shoulder. I go on Reddit. The far left, they go on brigading missions where they make threads with my username to make sure they can brigade me. And I'm just inundated with the most insane, disgusting language you could possibly imagine. But you know what? I'm used to it. Now, the reason I tell you this is I want you to imagine what it's like for a kid who I believe is like, was he 14 or 15 years old, who's not a public figure, not a political activist, just some kid who was minding his own business, to one day have the entire world land on your shoulders, calling you names and lying about you. God, could you imagine? There's a video, there's a photo of me that goes around, and it's me sitting at a table with some alt-right people. Why? I was interviewing them. I have no problem with that. And people like to lie. People like to take my videos and pull quotes out of context and make ridiculous and insane claims about me. But I'm used to it. At a certain point, a few years ago, it was frightening to me when I would see high-profile accounts screen grab my tweets or take videos from me out of context, edit audio, and lie. And I was really scared this would could damage my life. Now, I just don't care. I'm so used to it. It's frequent and it's insane. And what can you do? I'm over it. But I can't imagine what it must be like to be 14 or 15, to be a kid, and have adults 40, 50 years old saying they want you to die, saying they want your names, they want to destroy your life permanently. Could you imagine what it must be like to have a celebrity with millions of followers, somebody who hosts television shows, say, I will destroy you. This is a nightmare scenario, okay? We talk about the post-apocalyptic future, the nightmare dystopia. You're living in it. I love that quote from Pirates. What does he say? You best be believing in nightmarish sci-fi dystopias because you're living in one, where Jack Dorsey and Twitter won't take action against these people. But you know what? There's one good thing here, and you're looking at it. It's a lawsuit. And I hope to God the people who defamed these kids, who crossed that line, who called for violence against them, get their comeuppance. We cannot let this slide. So this, to me, you can tell I'm really worked up. I'm very excited for this. And look, I'll say this. People like to throw around activist a lot in media. And I think it's fair to point out that, while some people try to claim that I'm like more objective or whatever, I don't think the issue is that I'm objective in any way. I just think I'm a centrist. What does that mean? It means I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt to people on the left and the right. And people on the right get mad when I do it for the left. People on the left get mad when I do it for the right. It's not that I'm removed from the political fight at all and I'm just being objective. It's that I'm not, I literally do not care if a Democrat wins or a Republican wins, or, I just want to know what the truth is. I want to find effective solutions. So you can call that objective journalism. I think it's more partisan centrism. And what that means is people like it more because I'm willing to be a bit more centered than a lot of people who might be hyperbolic on the left or the right. So anyway, let's move on. They named the parties and jurisdictions and venue. They mentioned he was 16 years old. Okay, so clarification. I was wrong. He's 16. He attends CovCath, an all-male Catholic high school. The Post. So here, this is great. Okay. Nicholas is a 16-year-old 11th grade student. The Post is a foreign corporation existing under the laws of the state of Delaware, with its principal base of business being located at 1301 K Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. Yeah, you get the point. 16-year-old kid from Kentucky versus foreign corporation operating under the laws of the state of Delaware, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, David versus Goliath, okay? There exists complete diversity of citizenship between plaintiffs and the Post. The amount of controversy greatly exceeds $75,000, exclusive of interests, costs, and attorney's fees, as required to sustain subject matter. Now, I'm not familiar with all the legal jargon. Cause of action for defamation. Nicholas reasserts and incorporates by reference paragraphs 1 through 10 of his complaint as if fully restated therein. I don't know what that means. I'm not a lawyer. The first article features Nicholas prominently by publication. Yeah. Okay, so let's go down to the bottom. This just goes over a lot of the facts again and issues that you'll probably have to go to like a legal channel for, which I'm sure they're doing streams about this as well. But at the bottom, they have some more important points. Here's another important point that I stressed in the beginning. Nicholas is a private figure. Nicholas is a private figure for the purposes of this defamation action, having lived his entire life out of the public eye. He has no notoriety of any kind in the community at large. The reason I bring this up again, for those that are just tuning in, for those that have been watching for all, forgive me, but for those that are just tuning in, we'll give you an update. Lawsuit against the Washington Post by Nicholas Sandmann, $250 million claim. The reason why private figure is important is that there is a larger burden if you were a public figure. If I were to be sued, in some circumstance, I could argue private figure, but I'm relatively I'm essentially a public figure. So there's something called anti-SLAPP laws, which is a strategic lawsuit against public participation. Basically, you need to prove that whoever smeared you, defamed you, knew what they were saying was false. Now, there's some interesting precedent in the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas apparently wants to overturn the ruling Times v. Sullivan, which led to our current understanding, where there's a higher standard of public figures. That will be really interesting. And if he gets his opportunity to overturn it, what does that mean? It means Trump can sue the fake news. It means Trump can go after everybody. And, look, they say you can sue a ham sandwich. It doesn't mean you're going to win. I do think it's worrisome when billionaires wield their power against journalists, because journalists, don't have the same kind of resources as, say, the billionaire president. But at this point, what we're seeing right now is a 16-year-old kid. A 16-year-old kid who's going up against a massive corporation that was purchased a few years ago for $250 million. So this is definitely a David versus Goliath, and the underdog is certainly the kid. But here's the thing. Even though he's a private figure, the Post published negligently and with actual malice. Now, not a lawyer. My understanding of actual malice is that they knew what they were saying was false. And I think the justification for this is, well, actually, let's read it. It's right here. The negligence and actual malice of the Post is demonstrated by its utter and knowing disregard for the truth available in the complete video of the January 18 incident, which was available contemporaneously with the edited clip the Post chose because it appeared to support its biased narrative. A video from the event on the same day, a live stream of the event was public. It was sent to me as a tip. I watched it. Many people shared it and said, here's the proof. Why didn't the Washington Post? Why did they a day later come out with the story? Why did so many other outlets not correct it when the evidence was in their face? Well, maybe this will be the reckoning. Maybe they overstepped too far this time. And I'll say it one more time to everybody who's watching. This is just the example we've caught. And that's what's truly terrifying. How many stories have been fake? How many stories do you know are just not true and they get away with it? There is something to be said for people who don't trust a narrative if it conflicts with their worldview. That's a fact. The left and the right are guilty of this. It's a human element, not a political one. We all do this. I'm skeptical of reading certain stories when I distrust the information too. You have to have your guard up. But there comes a certain point where we know they're lying. I'll give you an example of something that's like a truth-stretching moment, right? It's a video I made the other day where Donald Trump tweeted that, SNL was making another hit job against Republicans and the networks should be looked into, he said, and that's the real collusion. What does looked into mean? I don't know. Maybe it means someone should do like run the data of how many times Republicans are smeared versus Democrats. Maybe it means an investigation. I don't know. He just says looked into. Looked into means look into it. I could take a glance at it. I looked into it. What happened? The New York Daily News wrote, Donald Trump calls for investigation of Saturday Night Live because they made fun of him, which is a ridiculous stretch. But I'll give you another example because I made a video the other day and I got people yelling at me for my lack of knowledge on nuclear reactors. But what I basically said was the media can frame even the truth in such a way to mislead you. And that's what's really scary. Now, in this instance, the video we all saw of Sandmann and Nathan Phillips, it was a real video. It actually happened. But what they did was it was selectively edited, and then the context was fabricated. So they took real video and lied about it. So one of the examples I often give, and if you follow my channel, you've heard it, is hydric acid. What if I told you hydric acid is used to clean the engines of trucks and it's found in cancer cells? It sounds, really scary. And then what if I told you it was found in the plumbing of New York City? Terrifying, isn't it? Until you learn that hydric acid is water. And the point I'm trying to make is, if you just use an unfamiliar term or frame something a certain way, you can make something you can make a statement like, did you know there's water in your plumbing, sound terrifying. When you realize that you can't sue, if I made a video where I said New York City is pumping hydric acid in the plumbing, everyone should be alarmed. Can't sue me for that. It's a fact. It is a fact, okay? But then you have these stories. So think about that. The news media, they frame stories in such a way where they can legitimately present real facts, but use a narrative or a framing device to trick you into believing something incorrect and get away with it. In this instance, they just disregarded the actual evidence. So they go through a lot of this. Again, I'm not going to read through it, but they do say, let's read this. Phillips himself is wholly unreliable and lacks credibility, as shown in part by his false claim to have served in Vietnam while a member of the military. As a professional activist with a known bias against President Trump and his supporters, his documented history of making similar false accusations, his use of the January 18 incident to promote his own political and personal agenda, the contradictions in his story established in his interviews, and that the video evidence that totally refute his story, this guy, I can't tell you how angry it makes me when I see that video of him in the face of Sandmann, and he's banging the drum and singing, and you realize this old man walked up to a teenager, got in his face, and was actually touching his body with his drum while banging on it. Why are we, even if the kids were being disrespectful, why are we blaming kids for standing there? This is an older guy who's engaging children. And look, I know it's hyperbolic to call them children, but come on, man. Some of these kids were like 14 years old. I'm not going to act like they're adults. Sure, teenagers. 16 is the cutoff for when I'll actually call you a teenager, because to me, a 14-year-old is a child. But let's move on. That's my bias. Take it for what it is. Boy, do they go through it. Damages. Okay, so they get into the... okay, I'm going to read. This is going to be good. The publication of false and defamatory accusations directly and proximately caused substantial and permanent damage to Nicholas. It did. People are still dragging him. Even though the facts are out, you still have celebrities saying, well, I still think they were being disrespectful. You had an article that I believe came from Gizmodo where they said, don't believe new videos. We all know what we saw. Are you nuts? God, leave these kids alone, man. The false and defamatory accusations were republished by third parties and members of the mainstream and social media mob of other bullies, which was reasonably foreseeable. The false and defamatory accusations against Nicholas are defamatory per se, as they are libelous on the face without resort of additional facts. And as clearly demonstrated here, Nicholas was subjected to public hatred, contempt, scorn, obloquy, and shame. I'm just checking to make sure that everything's functioning well on the live stream. So just apologies for double checking. As a direct and proximate result of the false and defamatory accusations, Nicholas suffered permanent harm to his reputation. As a direct and proximate result of the false and defamatory accusations, Nicholas suffers and will continue to suffer severe emotional distress. And that's what I was trying to point out when I was explaining what it's like for me on Twitter. Okay, I've got 213 or so thousand followers as of today. Big boost after going on Rogan. And I got to tell you, it sucks. My phone is... I get my notifications are endless. Like, so when my phone is on sleep mode, like most of the time, it's just I open it and there's like 70 notifications from Twitter, and it shows me on the front of my phone insults, derogatory comments, and you know what? I just erase. I'm used to it, but I can't imagine what it's like to be a 16-year-old kid, never experiencing this level of attention, to have everyone in the world calling for your head, literally calling for your head, saying that you should be thrown to a wood chipper. My God, I was really concerned this kid was going to, self-harm. I'm not kidding. Man, it's terrifying. I'm glad this kid had a family there to keep him safe. There's a lot of older people who don't have, they might live alone. They might not have someone who can protect them. They say, as a direct and proximate result of the false and defamatory accusations, Nicholas is forced to live his life in a constant state of concern over his safety and the safety of his family. I got to agree. How many people saw this story and still think it's true? How many people are still tweeting the fake news is covering for him? I've seen it. I've seen activists saying they're lying. I know what we saw. They're covering up. And how many of those people are crazy enough to hurt this kid and his family? Enough. The Post published its false and defamatory accusations with actual malice and common law malice, thereby entitling Nicholas to an award of punitive damages. The Post's conduct was outrageous and willful, demonstrating that entire want of care that raises a conscious indifference to consequence. Nicholas is entitled to an award of punitive damages to punish the Post and to deter it from repeating such egregiously unlawful misconduct in the future. Bravo. I agree. Yes. Enough. There's responsibilities to being a journalist, okay? I have no problem when journalists make mistakes. This is negligence. At a certain point, you're so lazy and incompetent, you publish nonsense which can get people killed. Wherefore, Nicholas respectfully prays that judgment be entered against the Post for substantial compensatory damages in an amount not less than $50 million. And boy, do I hope he gets it. And I hope this is a message to everybody. Could you imagine if Nicholas Sandmann becomes a billionaire from these lawsuits? Will he get $250 million? I don't know. But they're suing a ton of people. And I got to say, many of them are celebrities worth tens to maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars. Several news organizations. Could you imagine if Sandmann actually walked away with $1 billion from this? Man, $1 billion. Wow. 250 from one organization out of the 50 to 60 or so that have been sued. Not all of them are going to have 250 million. I don't think Washington Post has 250 million liquid to be able to pay for this, so it's not likely. But it seems like they will be suing in excess of $1 billion. Maybe he'll end up winning 10 million, like, in the tens of millions, maybe even the hundreds. We'll see. But he's suing a lot of celebrities, and they're gonna have to pay for this. At a certain point, you have to realize, with great Twitter comes great responsibility. You got 1 million followers? Yeah, well, you got to take care of what you say. You're publishing. And that's true for anybody, even if you have 10 followers. You say something, you can get in trouble for it. You can whisper something to somebody and be sued for defamation. That judgment be entered against the Post for punitive damages in an amount not less than $200 million. Oh, and it gets better. That Nicholas recover his reasonable attorney's fees and expenses from the Post. That all costs of this action be taxed to Post. And that the court grant all such other and further relief that the court deems just and proper, including equitable relief, respectively submitted this 19th day of February, 2019. Goddamn. Breaking news, as it were. So there we go. This is floating around on Twitter. Let me pull up the Twitter account for L. Lynn Wood. Oh, it looks like he actually follows me. I should maybe interview him. So my computer does not like moving things over monitors. Let's try that again. Here we go. So this is at L. Lynn Wood, and he's got a new tweet within the last 22 minutes. He said, Washington Post recklessly ignored basic journalist standards because it was eager to advance its biased agenda against real Donald Trump by impugning individuals perceived to be his supporters. Nick Sandmann was perceived as an easy target. He is 16, inexcusable on every level. And there's another one from half an hour ago. In this country, our society is dedicated to protecting children regardless of the color of their skin, their religious beliefs, or the caps they wear. Washington Post did not care about protecting Nick Sandmann. The Post just cared about being the first and loudest media bully. Well, there you go. Now, he's not verified, but he does have 14,000 followers. He is followed by many personalities you can see here, including CPAC, Greta Van Susteren, Yashar Ali, Mike Cernovich, and The Daily Caller, Alam Bokhari. I was going to pronounce your name wrong. Sorry, Alam. And Ash Scow, and who is this? Jana Winter. So you've got, some, who's this guy? Kevin Cork. So it appears that it's as legitimate as they come. Wow. I just speed talked for about 50 minutes. You can tell I'm really worked up and excited for this. And I'll say this too. I just ate a ton of chicken, and I am a bit sluggish right now and tired and dehydrated from working all day. I made 6 videos and did a live stream. So the point I'm trying to make is I'm very exhausted, but still excited enough to talk a million miles an hour for 52 minutes and now read some of the super chats you guys sent in. So seriously, thank you everybody who tuned in this far. Follow me on minds.com/Timcast and minds.com/Subverse. We have a new channel up. You can check it out. It's youtube.com/Subverse videos, where we'll have a video live in a few minutes. We're trying to make the new channel very boring, and I mean that in a good way. We don't want to do sensational gotcha questions, overt opinion. We're going to be talking to experts and doing more, straightforward news. I know some people get mad because they don't like that sometimes you just interview some activists and they say what they say, and that's what they say. What else are we going to do? But let me read some of these super chats, and I'm gonna admit to you guys, I'm not going to be able to read everything. I'm terribly sorry. I'll make sure this is clear as well. As the live streams get bigger and bigger, right now we've got 6,336 viewers. There's nothing I can really do to read all of the super chats. It's just unfortunate. There's just too many. So I may actually work something out, and maybe even I'm going to start scheduling probably active live streams soon. Expanding Subverse. We'll probably do a lot of the official live streams on Subverse, and I'll probably be bringing on someone to actually grab super chats to make sure I can read through all of them, or do something to make sure there's no way I can read it, because I got to be honest, when I had my last stream 2,000 viewers, it took me about an hour to read every single super chat. So while I can appreciate it, I apologize to anybody if I can't get to your comments, and I'll try and read through the best of my ability. One of the latest. Hey, talk about this. Since I can't post URLs, I had to get around it. Change comma to period needs to be reported more. I'm sorry, I don't know what that link is because I can't click it on the super chat. Someone says, love me some Tim. Appreciate it. We got a big super chat from Michael P. For your shaggin' wagon Tim, at least that's what they called them in my day. Yes, because I'm building a van for mobile production. And for those that are watching, considering there's 6,000 of you, I'm looking for someone who can do van conversions. Anybody who's interested, paid gig, convert a van. Basically, we just want to have a general, I bought a big van so that we can travel the country and produce more field reporting while still doing live breaking news and all the good stuff. It's going to be pretty epic, actually. Mobile news van camper, epic trips. Need someone who can build it. That's tough to find. Another super chat here. Reginald McIntosh, keep doing what you do, Tim. Whenever on call to family and friends when they're looking for honest news sources, I always point them your way. Any ETA on the news van, really looking forward to your on-the-ground cover again. Well, I will say this. Subverse has we officially started. We're doing videos Monday through Thursday. And the reason for that is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the attempt is to get more on-the-ground reporting. So for the most part, that's been Emily, who's been doing field reporting and then, editing her own pieces and submitting them. For Subverse, she did this really great mini doc on the Yellow Vest protests. All of this is up at youtube.com/Subverse videos. We also have a on-the-ground, on the ground, but it's an interview in New York with Dr. Deborah So. And then we also have Emily covered an anti-Trump protest. So I'll say this on the anti-Trump protest. When we go on the ground and cover a protest and ask protesters what they're doing there is no other side. If there are counter protesters, we'll ask them. In this instance, it was just anti-Trump people saying their anti-Trump things, and that's journalism. Here's what the protesters here think. There's no other side to that. Okay? So if we go to an event and there's, Antifa and pro-Trump, we'll do our best to get both. Typically, it's hard in that situation because the left doesn't want to talk. But I just want to make sure that's clear. And we'll probably have to do a disclaimer about that in these videos. Like, listen, we are not going to go down and purposefully make people look stupid or purposefully make them look smart. We're going to take a random selection of individuals who are willing to talk, ask them questions, and then we're going to put it together. And in this report, some people sound really, really dumb. Some people sound, average, to okay. But often protesters don't really know what they're talking about. And that's just a sad reality. I'm not trying to be a dick. So I'm going to say this right now to everybody who watched one more time. We're getting close to where I've got to wrap things up, but I'm going to try and read through as much of these super chats as possible. Thanks for hanging out. I know a lot of people are leaving because we wrapped up on the lawsuit part, so appreciate it. Thanks for the super chats. You can donate at timcast.com/donate. You can follow on minds.com/timcast. Subscribe to this channel. You can subscribe to youtube.com/timcastnews. I've actually got videos live now, which, people are probably deviating to this instead of that. And then Subverse videos. It's SUBVERSE. That's the new brand we're going to be producing, where I'm actually commissioning documentaries. So if you are a producer, if you have a camera, if you are a professional, or even to an extent a skilled amateur, feel free to submit pitches. My email address is tim@tagg.ly, and I'll stress again. A pitch. A lot of people email me saying, I'd love to work with you. That's it. I can't respond to that. I have like 500 emails from people. But if you have a pitch document, like this is a story I want to cover, we're commissioning these, which means, you go out, you film stories you want to do, and we can cover costs and we can compensate. So budgets are, it really depends. It really just depends, but they're not very large. I'm not Vice. I'm not HBO, but we definitely want, people who are out there field reporting, who have an idea for like a 10 to 15 minute mini doc to submit those ideas. And again, if you know anybody who can convert a van, shoot an email my way as well. And I'll stress again, somebody who knows how to convert a van, because I appreciate it. A lot of people said they're willing to learn. They messaged me saying, I really want to help you do it. I don't know how to do it. It needs to be someone who knows how to do it because we're working with very expensive electronics, solar panels. So there needs to be a certain level of experience. So let me see. I don't know if I can read through all the super chats, man, because this is a ridiculously huge list, but I'm going to go back as far as possible and read. I'll just try and read through them. Max Wild said, I'm not totally in your camp politically, but I love your passion for seeking the truth and calling out dodgy bastards. Keep it up, mate. Appreciate it. Forge says they need to pay for a smirk-free America. Agreed. Cha-ching, cha-ching says, you're the best, Tim. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. Stuart Bro, here's to the only real journalist in the American media. Oh, I disagree. I don't think I'm that good. I think it's, I was in New York and someone started talking to me about how they like my work. And I'm like, I'm just some dude on the internet talking about stuff I read, right? That's really what it's about. Yes, I probably have a decent understanding of how to do investigations, how to find personal details and sort through what may or may not be true I'm a journalist, right? I don't think I'm the best. I don't think I'm the most objective. I just think I'm rather centrist. So people confuse centrist with objective. No, I'm just like a center-left individual, and I'm willing to hear out people on the left or the right. I'm even willing to interview people who are fringe extremists. I've interviewed a former Soviet general, Brazilian drug lords, Antifa, the alt-right. I'm willing to try and understand everybody. Studwhelm says, love your stuff, Tim. The truth is what matters, especially in reporting. The world needs more people who have integrity like you. Thanks for your efforts. Yes. Excuse me. Can people just be honest? If I do something and it's wrong, I'll just be like, oops. Sorry, I don't mean to be wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong. It's funny how there's a lot of people on the far left who call me a liar. Sometimes on the far right, I know these things mean very little, but they're like, Tim's a liar. And I'm like, dude, listen, I'm not intentionally misleading anybody. Can't you just accept that sometimes I'm wrong, right? I say that about everybody. I say that about even Donald Trump. We got another tweet that popped up from Ellen Wood. What do you say? Nick Sandmann is 16 years of age, 5'9" in height, and weighs 115 pounds. The school field trip to the nation's capital was the first out-of-state trip Nick had ever taken without being with his family. He did nothing to deserve being attacked, vilified, and bullied. Nothing. Yep, and they still vilify him. Somebody said they wanted to lick my bunghole. I appreciate that, I guess, although it's kind of weird. Is that a Me Too moment? I'm being Me Too'd. Christy R., thanks for what you do, Tim. We Smoke Bitcoin says, half of this is for Pim Tool. Make sure he gets it. I will, absolutely. Flawless Sneak says, appreciate you, Tim. I'm from the reactionary sphere. Listening to you keeps me from going too far into the weeds. Disagree with you on 95% of things, though. Isn't it amazing how if you choose to communicate with someone in good faith, calmly and rationally, and try and just give them respect, they will actually come to agree with you in a lot of ways. I'm actually going to be doing a live stream, I think tomorrow, with a left-wing personality who hosts a TV show to talk about Ilhan Omar and how she was, denounced by the mainstream Democrats and Republicans. So, the goal here is I have no intention of misrepresenting anybody. I talk about what I think is true, and I explain how I feel. And anybody who's even on the left who wants to come on my channel and do a live stream and engage in conversations, I don't want to call them debates because I think they're discussions. I think our goal is to try and find a way to the truth. So there's an individual who's going to be coming on, I think tomorrow, and we'll have about an hour discussion or longer, talking about Bernie Sanders, identity politics, and Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar specifically, because she made several comments that that people said were anti-Semitic, and I lean towards recognizing that because there were a lot of mainstream personalities who are like, whoa, like, hey man, like chill on that. But there are a lot of left-wing personalities who are like, hey man, that's not fair. So someone said, Tim, show us your nipples. I will not. Grandmaster Level says, why didn't you cover the transgender that got shot for filming in public? The mainstream media is flipping it, saying she was filming kids. Video is there. No kids were filmed. I saw that video. For those that aren't familiar, there was a transgender individual who was a free speech auditor, was filming a security guard and got shot. I read the story and it's very, very short. Like it's literally like a paragraph where it's like transgender individual was filming and got shot. The guy who shot her was arrested. I don't really know what I can add to that. I don't really have a strong opinion on it. Right. Maybe I could fit it in with another topics on certain areas. Jair McConna says, check the layoff jobs news. I will do that. Matthew Hammond says, I hope these lawyers' parents take this to trial. Grandmaster says, I do a live stream on medical cannabis if anyone is interested. It's every Friday at 5 p.m. PST. We've done it 98 weeks in a row. Wow. That is a lot. Party Civi says, Jesse's going to be yeeted by the FBI. Yeah, I think so. Here's a question I appreciate. SpongeBob, but with the Sud, says, Tim, what's the hardest flip trick you can do? That would be, in terms of the weirdest thing you've ever seen, I recommend you look up the youtube.com/Bragic, Bragic. This is a buddy of mine who's a well-known skate video producer, and I did a couple of videos with him. One of them is called Nollie Hard Flip Rewind, and the other is called hang 10 hard flip. The hardest flip trick I can do, because this is probably jargon to a lot of you, is probably in terms of basic stance, nollie hard flip, late half flip or rewind. But the hardest trick I can actually do is called a hang 10 hard flip, late flip. So it's hang 10 hard flip, late flip. Yeah. And I've done it once. And I've done it terribly with like toe drags a couple times. So after like 100 tries, I'll get it, you know? So that's like, that's why I won't really say it's the hardest that I can do, because I've only done it once. But I've also done switch hard flip, late double flip. So, you know, that means nothing to many of you. I know. Feel like this was an acid test to see how far narrative can be driven opposite of truth. To test the waters to see if we're one step closer to 1984. There are 4 lights. How many of you know what that reference is? Thanks for the vids, Tim. I'm not a member, so here's a little something for the beanie. We're also planning, yes, for members. If you become a channel member, we are going to be doing exclusive live streams, very chill atmospheres, where it's going to be probably only like 30 to 40 or 50 people maybe in the stream. So if you're a channel member, I'm pretty sure your comments appear. I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to be doing exclusive streams, and it will probably be on Minds, because they have this really cool feature called Gatherings where you can actually come in the live stream and hang out. So we're trying to figure it out. It's complicated, new technology stuff, but we'll get there. Whoa says, thanks, Sim. El Presidente, journalistic integrity dies in the darkness, or in Washington Post's office. Miles Kinslow says, hey, Tim, the country is constantly being gaslighted. It's making people insane. Thanks again, Tim. Really appreciate your reporting. Seriously, it is. It is. Samurai 215 says, this may be the single most important lawsuit filed in recent memory. The mainstream media must be expected to report only facts and be held accountable when falsely push their political agendas. Hands down. If you make a mistake, you're fine. Mistakes, you can't sue for mistakes. But they didn't retract or apologize, and many of these stories are still live today, on Twitter especially. A Lupa says, I hope the Covington kids win. Hopefully that'll be a start to end this trend of division-driven fake news. Agreed. Charlie Harris says, we need an independent mainstream news source. We also need reporters to start being held accountable. Independent mainstream news source, you say? Well, Subverse, we have basically 2 people working on content so far. But there is news on the horizon, and expansion is underway. Here's the other big news. I am going to be launching a new show, probably through Subverse, which is going to be mysteries. And what I mean by mysteries is like historical mystery, modern history. So like World War II, maybe like 1800s, talking about stories that were never resolved and no one understands, spooky kind of things, maybe unexplained, maybe paranormal, but I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in the paranormal. So I really want to approach these stories about like ghosts and things from a skeptic point of view and entertain any logical possibilities. So that's another thing too. I know I've got a ton of emails from people saying they want to write for the show. If you want to write for a show, it is a paid position. We're sorting out the details. You just need to send writing samples to my email, which I mentioned earlier, tim@tagg.ly. Writing samples, please. Specifically, writing samples having to do with writing a nonfiction script writing, and pertaining to unexplained mysteries. So this could even be modern stuff like, you know, MH370, and we could do a big explanation with like, it's going to be entertainment. It's going to be music. It's going to have some visuals. It's going to be a podcast. The goal is for weekly. So, you know, there's that update for those that are curious. Darun Ulbane says, the media has always been biased. Now, just now with the net, it can be refuted as it's being reported. Absolutely. 100%. Corpus Delicti says, Tim, keep up the good work. Appreciate it. Drewby says, it was great meeting you at MythCon last year. Keep up the good work. Thank you for your amazing work from one Chicago to another. Appreciate it. Reginald McIntosh, I read I'm scrolling through, so I definitely read that one already. There's a bunch more I'm scrolling through a list. This list is kind of hard to go through. Solve for Excess, thanks for staying on Just Smollett case and doing such great work. You helped to keep this community safe. Sincerely, Chicago. Chicago's my hometown. Right? So when I heard that Just Smollett got attacked in an area where I used to skateboard at 2 a.m, I was like, no way, dude. Me and my friends would go out there and chill, and the only people we would ever see out there are security guards. Like, you got to understand, the area where Jesse claimed to be attacked, it's by what's called the clock. The clock. It's from overhead on Google Maps, you can see it's a clock face. It's by NBC Tower. That area is wealthy and empty. And I'm like, I have friends who live there, and they're the snootiest rich people you'd ever meet. And I'm just like, come on, man, no way. No way is some random Trump supporter walking around one of the most liberal cities in the country, yelling MAGA country with bleach and rope, attacking people in an area that's a ghost town at night. Get out of here. You're crazy. Don't normally send super chats, but I like the work you do too. Tim, thank you for unbiased reporting from Lord Browning. Appreciate it. Kezdadik says, we are willing to admit that history is romanticized, but do we leave it at that with the Holocaust, especially when the victors who won wrote history? It's tough. Hi All says, Tim, can you do a video on Vic Mignonia? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm familiar a little bit with it, but it's admittedly too far outside of my wheelhouse for me to accurately break down. I think, for those not familiar, he's an anime voiceover actor who has been accused of impropriety and apparently lost his job. I don't know enough about him or the backstory or the history of him as a voice actor to even know where to begin on this. And there's just some things I'm just not good enough. So that's another thing you should realize too. You know, when I was on Joe Rogan, he mentioned Jeff Bezos and want to talk about it. And I'm like, admittedly, that's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, right? I have certain things I know a lot about, like the hacker community and the culture war and street level, protest action politics stuff I've been covering for years. Jeff Bezos, I read up on it, but still, it's not something I've dug into hardcore, right? So, B. Jones says, hey, Tim, here's a $5 for the news van. Your on-the-ground reporting in Catalonia is why I started watching you. Keep up the good work. Appreciate it. And I know I have not been doing very much on-the-ground stuff for a while, especially since I moved into a new location. But one of the main goals is, and has been for a while, is getting this van up and ready so we can drive around the country. I can produce videos like this because what I'm doing, I have a camera in front of me, got a microphone right here. You probably can't see it. And I want to have this all mounted on in the van so we can be pulled over in the middle of wherever. And I can do live streams. I can record videos, and then we can do on-the-ground interviews. I want to do a driving tour of Middle America, talking to people about general politics, especially as we get into 2020. For that, I need someone who knows how to do van conversions. I've reached out to contractors. I've reached out to car people. And the problem is contractors, car people, neither of them know how to insulate a vehicle to make it a camper. You need like an RV specialist, but then they just tell me to go buy RVs and I get nowhere with them. And the van conversion specialists are overbooked to a ridiculous degree. So for the time being, it's kind of stalled. We're trying to figure it out still. We Smoke Bitcoin says, Tim gets more tips than a high-class stripper. And then we have then I have Michael Peace who said, for your shaggin' wagon, appreciate it. I read that one already. Ender says, watch the kids win these cases. The left just end up shouting that they are using their white privilege and that's proof America is racist. I wouldn't doubt that. I Love the Nation of Israel says, isn't $250 million what Emperor Bezos paid for the rag that is WAPO? Exactly. They actually say that in the lawsuit that this is literally the amount of money he paid for it in the first place. Maybe that's why they're asking for it. The Domestic Engineer says, you are so welcome. I love Subverse and think what you do is great. Thank you very much. Michael Murkowski says, fellow Southsider here. Keep up the good work. I will. Solok Gree, thanks for the super chat. Aaron Zemansky says, great work, Timcast. Thank you. Anthony Mendoza, fake news must die. No More says, I would absolutely love to see Trump sue the liars. Me too. I would. I am concerned about a future where powerful people sue the media into submission. That's scary. That's a different kind of dystopia. I'm also scared that people just lie. They get away with it. They make money off lying. Listen, when you publish fake news, you make money off the fake news, and then you retract the fake news, but you keep the money. You understand how this works? There's a company that produces fake products. I don't want to call them out because they'll sue me, but they repeatedly get sued. They repeatedly get fined by the Federal Trade Commission. They'll make a product. They're like, we'll say crystals, right? They sell things that are like crystals that improve your balance and things like that. All fake. They use magic tricks to trick people into buying them. And then once they make, $20 million in sales, they get fined $1 million. Then they shut their business down, start a new business doing the same thing. And the cycle continues because the FTC is like, hey, we got a free $1 million, whatever. And they don't stop them. The profit's there. If these news organizations write a fake story, they'll make money off that story. If you've got a $40 CPM, like some companies do, some have more, you get 1 million clicks on that, you're going to make some good money. Then you have to retract. You make money on the retraction. A lot less, but you will. You keep the money. They don't, when someone demands a retraction and they make it, they don't give the money back. They made the money. And that's why the system in place currently today incentivizes publishing fake news. Because if they don't get caught, they get away with it. And if they do get caught, they still get to keep the money. And therein lies the big problem. Jessica Eustace says, a few dollars to help scrape free candy off your van. Let's have 2019 to be the start of the karma arc. Melody Scott Zindel, thanks for the super chat. William Knapp, dihydrogen monoxide was a reference I made earlier, to hydric acid. Promethean Coaching says, sponsorship opportunity. Contact me. I actually have an email on my channel you can contact for any sponsorships. Although I don't think I'm doing any at this point, just because, I don't know. So you can check out the email at the About section on my channel. Jared Genestazin says, donating to you rather than any political party. I appreciate it. I don't, you don't have to give me money. Nobody does, but I really appreciate it. It helps me do what I do. Jessica Eustace says, you could see the kid flinch with the drum beating. That's how close he was. And you even saw Sandmann go like this to his friend, like, come on, chill. Like, no, stop. Don't antagonize. Someone's asking when my beanie will gain sentience. God knows. God only knows. Darun Albane says, have him offer a 50% reduction for a full page retraction and apology. BJ and the Bear says, love me some Tim. Uh-oh, just jumped. Yeah, every so often the list just jumps. And then I cut, like, I'm trying to read through this, and then wherever I was is gone. And there we go. That's what happened. I have no idea where I'm at now. Okay. That's unfortunate. All right, well, apologies to everybody who just got chopped off. The list just jumped, and I've lost. So, unfortunately. Jacob says, keep up the good work. You're one of the most credible journalists I've seen. I appreciate the sentiment. I just, try and just figure out what's going on in the world and share what I find. John W. says, Tim, what's the email again? I'm co-owner of Garden City Customs outside Omaha, Nebraska. Oh, excellent. tim@tagg.ly. But I will look up Garden City Customs. I was just in Omaha, and maybe there's something we can figure out. So I will actually save this. And reach out to you after I wrap this up. And I'm going to wrap it up soon. I'm trying to read as much as I can. Rachel Newkirch says, good. Thanks for the super chat. Mimi X Tina Shell K. Rowe says, love you, Tim. Thanks for always being a voice of reason. You deserve the odd $5. Thank you. Appreciate it. Seriously. Sean Rufus says, hey, Tim, I can do your van if you bring it to Canada. Thanks and good luck. I don't know if I can go to Canada. For a Rough Goyam says, Tim, I have an uncle who worked at IndyStar who lost his job to downsizing. How can he apply to work at Subverse? He has 20 plus years experience in journalism. Wow. I don't know if we're at the point yet where the website is going to have articles and you do anything like that. Everything is slow organic growth, right? Did it just jump and not? Oh, okay. Oh, I think we caught up. Good. The goal is going to be one step at a time. So the next show we're doing is the mysteries show once per week, which means I need somebody who wants to write scripts for mysteries. It needs to be 10 minutes long. These are full episodes exploring mysteries. So it's 10 to 15. And we're going to turn the scripts into a book eventually. So we're going to do a collection of, various mysteries. So it's going to be like a skeptical guide to mysteries. And we're going to do episodes once per week. They're about 50 minutes long. And from there, assuming we can generate, it's going to operate essentially as its own podcast, right? It's going to have its own Patreon, its own reward systems, and we're going to do a per show basis thing. And assuming it does well and makes, ad revenue and stuff and functions, if we can stay in the black, we expand. If we go in the red, we don't. And I'm trying to make sure growth is really slow on purpose so that we don't do one of these BuzzFeed situations where we hire a ton of people with investment money and then, collapse. Or I'm not accusing them. I don't know what they did, but I'm just saying. Okay, so Exploding Prinny at Work says, Tim, any thoughts on the rat-infested LA City Hall with its typhus outbreak? California is losing it. Really? I didn't know that. That's disgusting. I don't know, man. Wow. Alan Brady says, I'd like you to do a show and tell all the stuff on your back wall, please. I'm super curious. I have done that several times. There, basically everything is a reference to something specific I've done in a story. And then behind me on the left is just more like personal cultural knickknacks. I've got Domo-kun, and I've got a Thomas Jefferson thing. I've got an Overwatch coin bank, and I've got Szechuan sauce from McDonald's, which is probably the most disgusting thing up there because it's going to spoil at some point, or maybe just burst open, which would be disgusting. But Szechuan sauce is culturally relevant because of the dude who jumped up on the McDonald's counter screaming that he was Pickle Rick. Remember that? Okay. Richard Vina says, what's your favorite Marvel movie? Doctor Strange, hands down. Doctor Strange, hands down. And then Infinity War because Doctor Strange is in it. Doctor Strange is my favorite MCU character. Hands down, I love that movie. And I realized it when I watched it for like the 30th time on a plane, because every time I'd fly, I'd be like, oh, Doctor Strange, I'd watch it. Like I can watch this movie forever. And I was like, man, I really do like watching this movie. And then I could also quote the movie verbatim. I've never liked the movie, but I think I love Doctor Strange because there's just so much about it that I think is he's an arrogant jerk, but he becomes a superhero who's able to go toe-to-toe with Thanos simply because he's learned and reads books and has a good memory. And, that's fascinating. I love the idea that he earned his abilities through hard work and a bit of natural talent. Don't get me wrong. But, like Iron Man has his powerful weapon. Doctor Strange has his, abilities and training through. I don't know. I just like it. I just do. It's whatever. Coltron says, thanks for your hard work. I watch every upload. Appreciate it. Milt Nation says, keep doing good work. Also have a great birthday. Yes, my birthday is coming up soon. Wonderful. And I'm doing an event with Quillette. I don't know if I'm supposed to announce this, but I believe it's going to be March 12th in New York City. For those that are interested, I'm going to be at an event and I'm going to be talking, and you're probably going to hear me say a lot of the same things I've already said, especially on live streams. But, if you want to come hang out, the details will be up soon at some point. Mexican Man and Cheese says, new law, retractions pushed with vigor as fan news. I don't know what you mean. Okay, last one. I've got to sign off. We've been going long. Jeb Reed says, I made a special Trump protection crystal. It cures derangement syndrome. True story. I was contacted by Pfizer today. Just between us, it's road salt and cabbage soup sweat. Don't tell anyone. Okay, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Wow, was I hyped on this lawsuit. So there you go. You can follow me on Minds, minds.com/Timcast. I'll have a video up at 10 a.m. Excuse me. I'm burping. I need to go to bed because this has been a lot of work. 6 videos per day for the past several weeks, and then a live stream today. I appreciate all of the super chats. I appreciate all of the support, all of the follows. Life is certainly crazy when you're a high school dropout from the south side of Chicago who just recently I got to stand next to a PhD neuroscientist who asked, when I met Deborah So, I was so excited because Deborah So is brilliant, very smart scientist, and we did an interview, and then she was like, "Can I get a picture with you too?" And I was like, "Wow, high school dropout me." And there are people who are like brilliant scientists who want to get a photo with me. It makes me feel really I don't know what the right word is, but it gives me energy to continue doing what I do. It makes me feel like I should keep doing this. I'm doing something good. All of the support I receive from everybody. Pan of Pan says, hey, Tim, I'm a journal major at university, which requires me to do an internship to graduate. Would Subverse be open to me for something like that? Yes. I don't know the legalities of it yet, so it may take some time. And we would only do a strict, legitimate, unpaid, non-work internship, meaning I'm open to interns, but the internship I would be willing to do is going to be non-essential tasks. Like, feel free to come hang out while we work and watch and learn, and, you're not going to get paid for it or anything. I think if we do paid internships, it's got to be like an hourly rate, and I don't know if I'm set up for anything right now. So the good news is I'm stopping myself from getting to the point where I'm launching like a massive corporation. I'm not going to take an investment or anything like that. So it's going to be slow growth, but I'm going to end there. Follow me on Minds at Timcast. Sign up there because we've got a group at minds.com/subverse, minds.com/subverse. We have a group where you can chat and post stories. We do have rules. We do not allow hate speech, but let me clarify. We don't allow on the newsroom weird deviation conversation, and we don't allow you to post things that are derogatory. So we do allow things that would be considered hate speech on other platforms, so long as you're doing it in an actual intelligent way. If you want to post something where you're like, I think this group of people are awful, and you call them a bunch of names, we don't allow that. If you say, I think John Smith is this awful name and that also awful name, we don't allow that. If you say something like my personal opinion on the science of, like race and IQ or like gender science has to do with this article, we'll say, okay, even if I disagree with your opinion, I respect your right to make articulate arguments, but not disparage groups of people, specifically because this is a semi-private group whose intention is to seek out the truth, share news, fact check stories, and share stories that need to be covered that aren't getting covered. It is specifically for the purpose of news gathering and news functions. I personally do not appreciate people who want to make particular arguments about flat Earth or even to an extent race and IQ. I understand there's some nuance pertaining to like Sam Harris and stuff, which is fine. If you want to come in and talk about flat Earth, we're probably going to ask you to go somewhere else with that because some things are just too absurd. But it's complicated. It is. We're doing our best to try and have legitimate conversations. That being said, I am going to sign off now before I drop. I pass out, and I might end up playing, for those who are interested, Civilization 6, Gathering Storm. Very fun, and I will enjoy it. And I'm going to also enjoy a nice flavored soda water. So thanks for hanging out. That's about it. I will see you guys next time. For the most part, these live streams are reserved for stories that are so big and breaking, I just have to do them immediately. Otherwise, I will just do like another bonus video on my second channel or save some stories for commentary the next day on my main channel. But this story was huge. You can tell how excited I was because I talked straight for 52 minutes and wow, the Washington Post is being sued. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. youtube.com/TimcastNews and 4 p.m. youtube.com/Timcast. Take care.